Hello, my name's Paul Rhodes and I run Green Gorilla Apps, which has become, well, we trade as Green Gorilla Automation. Um, and I'm recording my very first YouTube video. I use my hands a lot. I'll be annoying like that. I'll also say a lot of analogies that won't make a lot of sense. The idea behind this video is I do a podcast normally on a Friday morning with a good friend of mine called Sean. So unfortunately, Sean's really poorly at the moment. So we're not going to do an episode of Ctrl Alt Dev. But I've been talking to a few people recently, and they've been saying, Paul, you should do kind of a YouTube video series. So this is episode 1. Goodness knows how it's going to go. I mean, this is out of my comfort zone completely. I am bricking it. But why would I record, a YouTube video? I guess it's because I've kind of got a bit of experience in the software industry. So I started my first company in 2009. Before that, I was kind of employed in as a developer. I went from junior to senior over a sort of 10-year period. I went to university and did like a computing science degree. Tell a lie, I did the only computer science degree you could do without maths. So in the end, it was a Bachelor of Arts, but there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to float around a lot in terms of like the structure to this is it's pretty much unscripted. So I've got 3 things I'd like to go through. One is, okay, who am I? Why am I even doing this? Which I've alluded to. The second one is I'll kind of give you a bit of insight into what goes on in our weeks. So there's always challenges. There's always opportunities that crop up. So I'll share some of those, like kind of behind the curtain sort of stuff from our company, Green Gorilla Automation. And then I'll also touch on some of the stuff that's happening with AI and software development and how that's impacting it. And that's kind of what we tend to do on the podcast with me and Sean. I'm incredibly bad at timekeeping. So I've actually got my little Pomodoro timer. If you don't know what a Pomodoro is, it's just like a focused timed element. We've got everyone in the team one of these. So I'm determined today to not waste your time. So I'm going to say it for 20 minutes as an introductory one. I can talk for England and I can rant for England. So like I say, I'm still very nervous. Hopefully I'll ease into this and I'll stop using my hands as well. So I guess, why do this? So there's a couple of people who've been saying, it'd be a really good idea. And I do have a lot of opinions about what's going on. I guess at a very, very high level, I think over the last 3 years, we've kind of experienced the most traumatic, but also most opportunistic period in our entire history as a company. And also I think software and tech in general is going through a massive change, to the point where nobody knows what's going to happen. But I can kind of give behind the scenes as a UK business owner exactly what I'm experiencing and what I'm seeing. So I'll dive into that. But like I said, I kind of graduated. It made me smile to myself when I was thinking about this. So I went and made a coffee earlier, and I live by coffee, and it was kind of like I was thinking about, well, what can I possibly share? But just to show, even in my short career, I graduated in 2002. I went to uni in 1998. I did a 4-year course. I did a sandwich course. So I did a year in industry in Manchester. That's not relevant. It's just how my brain works. But I graduated primarily in learning how to program CD-ROMs. So I came out of uni, and within 2 to 3 years, that industry was pretty dead. So I got a first job as a junior developer, basically making CD-ROMs, where it was quite an interesting thing compared to the web, because the gold master had to be as bug-free as possible. Whereas when the web came along, obviously the web was along before that, but when I moved to be a web developer, you can hotfix and you can bug fix a lot easier, and we still do to this day. In terms of after CD-ROMs, I kind of got into Flash games development. So Flash again is dead. So I think anything I touch seems to die. It's probably the thing here. For about 10 years, I was PHP. And we used frameworks before Laravel and stuff was really around. It was Zend, boring things like that. And fundamentally found this thing called Cake PHP, which was like a very opinionated framework. And I really liked that. And then long story short, I'll touch on this in future episodes, but the first business I ever set up was literally a technician turned business owner. So I knew quite a lot about running teams. I knew quite a lot about how to deliver software projects. I knew absolutely nothing about being a business owner. And I can touch on that in future episodes, but effectively I lost that business in 2012. And I went through some really, really dark times. I don't know why I'm smiling. It was horrific. Yeah, so that was when the Summer Olympics were on. It's like February now. The Winter Olympics are just starting in Italy, and yeah, I remember the Olympic torch came through our hometown, and I remember, there's obviously crowds celebrating and that. And I remember, I don't think I smiled. I was there for the kids and I was there for the experience. But all I remember is being incredibly sad after what was going on, literally in at that time of losing my first business. But I did an Alan Partridge. I kind of bounced back, and I really drew on the lessons that I learned and like things that I just wouldn't do the same again, things that I'd change. And in 2012, I set up Green Gorilla Apps basically out of the ashes of the previous company. I started with a small team and we switched to Ruby on Rails a lot more. So we were using Cake PHP and we went to Ruby on Rails because we just thought, well, Cake PHP is built on this framework. So we've been a Ruby on Rails development company for 14 years now. And that's how everybody in the company knows that. We've done Scrum. A few highlights, I guess, during the past 14 years is 2015, we went remote. Everyone thinks we went remote because of COVID, but no, we did it way before. And one of the reasons we went remote was really, looking back, quite, again, opportunistic. I think one of my personality traits is I'm always looking for, there's got to be another way. Like the way that everyone else does it doesn't necessarily mean the way that we should do it. And we're constantly questioning as a team how we do things, even if it's like we've got a recent experience where we're questioning how we do project management and Scrum in our business. So I was a qualified Scrum Master back in one of my employed roles. And we've taken on Erin, who's a fantastic project manager. And then last Friday, we all get together for these quarterly days and we met up in Liverpool and some beers and some food. And, it was like a question of, well, just because that's the way we've always done it doesn't necessarily mean that's the best for right now because of the changes in everything that we're going through. So we're questioning that, and Erin's working on that as a special project. You can see how my brain works. I'm jumping around here. But if I dart back to the remote working kind of opportunity that came along, it was literally John, one of the developers, was having his first child. I started my first business when Fraser, my son, was a month old, and I lost my home office to his cot. My daughter was already in there, but there wasn't going to fit two cots and a home office. So John approached me and basically said, could we be more flexible? Could he work some days from home? And I was kind of like, well, the way I would approach it is, if I'm going to offer it to you, John, which I endorse, I'm going to offer it to everyone, because I don't think they should be penalised if they don't have children, if that makes sense. So we just rolled it out as a company trial. Everything we do at GGA where we're looking to change processes, we call it a trial because it allows us to say it didn't work a lot easier. And we've done loads of stuff really, really recently. We've just binned off a load of projects that weren't really working. So yeah, we did a week's trial in 2015. We had a 6-year lease on an office with a break clause. It could probably have about 20 people in it. And we took the brave decision to trial remote working. I think, digressing into, we really like Ruby on Rails, and the founders of Ruby on Rails, like DHH and stuff, around 37 signals. So I think books like Rework has just been instrumental in my path, and then they released Remote, which was almost like a blueprint of, these are the things you need to consider if you're going to be a remote team with. I think their vision is obviously global staff as well. At the moment, we're fairly UK based. We've got Pam in the Philippines, who helps me with marketing and admin, which is fantastic. That's been a real game changer for us. Yeah, I'm jumping around. I'm determined as well with this podcast or vodcast, I don't even know what it's called on YouTube, to just do it off almost like as a riff, really. Single shot, no editing. The only reason that made me switch to even doing this today is my script was telling me all the reasons I can't, and then I was literally, well, what would you choose? And I was like, well, I'd choose to do it because this sort of stuff energizes me. So I've took the punt, but then fortuitously, or however it works, I saw Bartlett talking about how you should be embarrassed of your first, you know, painting or your first song as a musician or whatever. And we'll go into music and other things because I'm a massive punk fan. But I think that's why this is almost like I've just got to get this out of the way, if that makes sense. So for me, I won't judge myself on this episode. I judge myself on the 50th. And that's how I set up the podcast with Sean. I was like, Sean, all we want to see is incremental progress, 1% better every single week that we do an episode. We've only done 15 episodes so far, but I was like, when we get to 50, we should be able to look back and see the slight edge in action, and we should be able to see real improvement. And I think we're getting better week on week. There's things, of course, that aren't as good some weeks, but I'm taking that exact same thing with this. So I can even go into like how I even plan this and what I've took a photo of what the setup looks like, because the other side of this camera is just a mess of wires and it's not pretty, to be honest. And as you can see, I'm in my home office. I haven't got a fancy studio. I haven't got a fancy background. So it's almost like starting, which is what Rework was talking about. So you need to be a starter. So I am jumping around in my head. I'll wrap up in a minute who I am and why I'm doing this. I think we talked about remote working, so I know a lot about that. Running remote teams. Software since 1998 when I went to uni. I went to uni to do computing because I was interested in music videos and I wanted to learn how to put music videos that I was filming of bands onto CD-ROMs. That was that was my thing. I've built loads of products over the years. My background when I was employed was as a product developer, if that makes sense, rather than service-based. Green Gorilla Apps today is a service-based business. For the last 11 years, we just built large bespoke systems. So we know how to scale software. We know how to roll it out at a very high level of production. And then AI came along, and I think I genuinely had first thing was probably a massive wobble, sorry, over a crisis of confidence. Like, where is this going? What does this mean for us? And I think that happens to this day. I was with two really good friends last night. We meet up probably once a quarter and we go to Ash's house, so Ash and Jez. And, I enter the room optimistic and like we share lots of, stories and tools and what's happening. And then I always end up quite depressed at the end of it in terms of like just the sheer scale and pace of change. And I woke up this morning and Ash and Jez on WhatsApp were just talking about how they'd had sleepless nights and they were thinking through what we were all talking about. And I think that's part of the reality of now, is like nothing's certain. There's no guarantees. Even though we're a remote team, this week I've been having like face-to-face one-to-ones with team members, going for lunch, sitting down, planning out. It's February the 6th today, I believe. I don't even know, day of the week. We don't work Fridays either. We do a 4-day week. So, and now I can go into how we do that and how that works. But yeah, I think the pace has changed. So I've been sitting down with team members. I've got to leave shortly. I'm going to go meet Ollie in Worcester. I'm going to go through it. But it's effectively like, okay, what is the strategy? What is the plan for 2026? Why are we doing all this? What did last year look like? And what are the lessons we've learned? And we're going through a really challenging time. Development as it was is gone. And what I've seen personally is that we've shifted massively to be the architects and the consultants. On the podcast and through various networks I belong to, there's this principle of 10-80-10. And I think that is so true. The human does the 10% of the planning and the kind of the leadership role and the vision setting. AI does 80% of the work. And then the human does the final 10% review. And a lot of people are not doing the review and they're not doing the planning. And, it's the old adage in software of garbage in, garbage out. So that I've really taken to heart. And my team have, to be fair, as a developer, I know that the natural personal state of a developer is compliance. It's risk averse. It's almost like change averse. And you can't you can't resist change in this ever increasing domino effect of AI. So it's the best thing that's ever happened to the industry, and it's also equally the worst thing that's ever happened to the industry, because what we used to do is no longer relevant. And I think this was touched on last night when we were looking at Claude, but we were looking at, Cursor, Claude itself. It's just so much change. But what I love about my team right now is they've embraced that. And so we are properly using AI as best we can to make us work on the stuff that only humans can do. And in the podcast, I'm going to repeat a lot of what we talked about, but like, I think the first very episode we talked about the CEO of Fiverr, it's probably a year ago now, saying about, if you think about it this way, that what used to be impossible is now the new hard. Therefore, what used to be easy should be eliminated. And so where we work with companies is we help them to address bottlenecks within their business that can be solved now in ways that you just couldn't solve before. You needed huge budgets. I think having built, I think it's something like 10 SaaS products over the last 14 years. I did one called Wow Giving for about 4 years, got onto 3 different accelerators with it. That's a whole story. That's a whole episode. That's a whole lot of tears. um, so yeah, so I think I'll wrap up who I am, and kind of, hopefully in there I've managed to convey, I've got quite a bit of experience of running a business. I've got quite a bit of experience of the tech industry. I've got quite a bit of industry of running teams and software, 4-day week, remote working, kind of, yeah, innovation led thinking, hopefully. So that's who I am. So I'm going to dive into now, just like, each week I'm going to try and come up with like just almost like an insight into like one of the things that we've done this week, or a poignant moment. So we're in a challenging time, and it feels like for every step forward we go, we take a step back. But this week we had it was a bit of a win, and I'll just try and tell it really quickly. So we basically engaged with a company, and they had the budget. Like, they were like, we've got this problem, and we want to get this solution, and we've got this amount of money when you get to exactly what they can invest. And it all sounded too good to be true, too easy. And as part of our process, and I guess the risk part of it is, we are a massive believer in, well, before we run, let's actually work out what you want delivering and how we can deliver it. So what we typically do is, it's a bit weird, but it's like, whoa, let's slow down our processes. Let's do like a tech spec. Let's actually go through and ask the difficult questions. Let's find the risks in this project, and let's effectively just make sure that it's all feasible. And then equally, that we can even deliver it for that budget, because even though that budget sounds big, it still might not be possible. So I've learned this over years and years of not doing that, where you promise the world. We've all done it, where we see the money and we think we'll solve the problem later of the delivery. So with this particular instance, I slowed them down, and typically I'll work to like a 10% budget of the overall budget on just the pure planning. And obviously planning has changed dramatically, and it's got so much better and more in depth now that we've got AI. So we use AI as a huge planning and estimating tool. We use tools like Whisperflow to extract it out of our heads in terms of vocally. So I find that I talk to Whisperflow to then turn that into prompts for things like Notebook LM. We'll create Notebook LM for the whole project. We'll go for walks as a team, or we'll go like for an individual run or whatever, and we'll listen to like the audio overview of the project before we have the next meeting. Anyway, this project was reliant on a third-party supplier being able to give us access to a particular thing. And if we couldn't get access, it was dead in the water. And 2 months down the line, it transpired that despite us being told, well, radio silence and everything was good, and every time we spoke to a third-party supplier, it was, yeah, no problem, it was absolutely dead in the water. So what happened was, we were able to complete the tech spec phase, as it's not feasible. Now, the client saved tens of thousands of pounds worth of money they would have potentially paid to us in a deposit to get this project over. We fell obviously to the point where we thought we had a sale. Like, if we did a tech spec, typically it goes onto things, but you can never count on anything. But what it showed me is there's a reason that part of the process exists. It's so critical to just make sure you can even deliver, because without access to that data, the project's a non-starter. So I think we've got a really good relationship with the company, and they've stood by their agreement in terms of, like, well, you have done the tech spec and you've actually invalidated the project. So we're talking to them about other potential projects, but then at the same time, another project comes in, and we're even more vehemently like, we need to do a tech spec, if that makes sense. So that's just an insight from this week. Is like, I was trying to think of probably what's the one thing that stuck out to me. Long story short, then I rant at my whisper flow and like, get this out of my head after a phone call. Literally put down the phone, agree everything, get the actions done, talk to Erin. Erin's on it. She's amazing. And she's like, okay, I'll handle that. I'll get the report sent over. And then I'll pick up Whisperflow and I'll talk to Whisperflow and I'll basically brain dump what's just happened. And then we have like different marketing pillars. So we try and do different things. I have like a newsletter, like an email newsletter. We use Beehive. We have a podcast. I've just started this. This will be part of, like my weekly ritual, if that makes sense. And I basically sent an email to my entire list, not naming names, not shaming anybody, but just telling the story of what had happened and why it was important to de-risk projects up front. And I'm probably teaching people to suck eggs at the end of the day. It's not rocket science, but it was kind of like my opinion of why this is so important. And we got a lead. We get somebody instantly reply who's like, yeah, I've got that problem. And it taught me again about the value of just cataloging and documenting stories and then sending it out to your network. So if you are building a network, again, I'm not an expert at this, but half of it is content, and the content already exists in what you're doing on a daily basis. Like, if you just take a second to log those things and there's a great, time's up, so I'll wrap up. I am terrible at time. There's a great guy in one of the networks, Entrepreneur Circle, Elliot Bottrell, and he talks about, taking photos of what you're doing in the week, using your notes on your iPhone and just logging what you're doing, so that when it comes to creating content, you've got this like really rich source, and it's also authentic. It's what's happened to you. It's not AI jazz, and it's not slop, and it's not like, I going on holiday is a bit like running a business. It's a real world from the trenches story, and I really like that. So last thing, my time has gone off, but as usual, I'll just wrap up for a couple of minutes. So when it comes to AI and its impact on software as a whole, the trend that I'm seeing, and I've been seeing for probably over a year, is a massive shift to consultancy. So really, the developers who have experience of launching, scaling large systems, we are really just becoming the architects now. So we oversee the plan and the vision and the road bumps in the way. But effectively, the AI is writing the code, is my experience. Like, if you spend the time, the 10%, to create the best PRDs that you possibly can, and you really think through that process, we're in a land now where you can then let a number of agents, a number of codes, however you do it, there's Cursor, there's Replit, all this sort of stuff. And it is phenomenal. And last night, the thing that stuck in my head was there's Ash. He went to a seminar. I won't say which one. And during the seminar, he built a tool in Gemini, and I was blown away. And he showed it me, and I was literally like, mate, that would take one developer, like 3 years ago, hard coding it, manually coding it, like a month to build. And I think me and Jez's mouths hit the floor, like our jaws dropped. And I think it's embracing the fact that if the 80% is done by the AI, which it is, we've really got to maximize where we can add value. And it's in the instruction, and it's in the thinking, and it's asking the right questions. But yeah, this is all intended to be single shot. This is all intended to be a quick overview of who I am and what we're doing. I promise you I'll get better. I'm asking for forgiveness at this point because this is so hard to kind of do as a first one. I'm hoping this will get buried in the archive and never see the light of day again. But if you have watched it till the end, thank you very much. And yeah, I'll be on next week, and I'll record another one, and I'll give you more insight into kind of what's been going on in the world of tech, what's been going on at GGA, and just my general thoughts and feelings, really. And I'll try and be as open and brutally honest as I possibly can. So thank you.